Welcome aboard, everybody. 9 o'clock. Leonard is here today, but he's been taking care of business, so he's unable to do the podcast. And you know me, I'm always here to chip in and help out. And so welcome, everybody. We're going to get started right away. I see the chat room is filling up, and we might have breaking news this morning from Boston Paul, who says that Verdugo will be traded to the St. Louis Cardinals for Tyler O'Neill. It's not confirmed yet. There was a question immediately in the chat room about Yoshida, and we will get to that later. The question was asked by someone who can't be here for the first 10 minutes. Rotorius, our friend. You're all our friends, okay? Anyways, you ready to talk some baseball now? I'll get started today by telling you a tidbit that Malpal talked to me. I should probably wait for Potato Pete to get here. Hello, Unholy Toledo, Malpal, J.R. Matz, Gibbs, Heckman, Daniel Ferrara, Gallo is here, Boston Paul, and a whole bunch of others. So we'll expect this chat room to fill up shortly. I don't know. Should I wait for Potato Pete to tell you this tidbit that I got from Malpal yesterday? No, I don't think I will. You know that Potato Pete lives in Pittsburgh, and he's been a disgruntled Pittsburgh Pirates fan for a while. But here's a comparison between A.J. Preller of the San Diego Padres and the Pirates. He says to me that A.J. Preller took over in 2015. And since then, since 2015, the Padres' record is .554 and .640. That's a .463 winning percentage. The Pirates, since 2015, are .544 and .648. That's a .456 winning percentage. The Padres' payroll, however, total since 2015 is almost $1 billion. It's $919 million, while the Pirates have only spent $567 million. So for an extra $352 million, A.J. Preller has netted 10 more wins than the Pittsburgh Pirates. So I thought that was an interesting tidbit because you don't think of these two teams on the same level at all. So for 10 more wins than the Pirates, A.J. Preller spent an extra $352 million. Now let's get right to the nitty and the gritty about Carlos Correa. Lenny's laughing at the nitty and the gritty. Okay, we'll say Bull Dinky before the show is over too, I'm sure. All right. So it sounds like the Mets and Carlos Correa and Scott Boras, of course, are in an agreement. And they say that they're working through their issues. Now, last night, John Heyman wrote that definitely some other teams touched base with Correa right after the word of the physical concerns trickled out. Now, it's interesting that teams are still approaching this guy. You know, I mean, it was one thing. He immediately signed with the Mets after the Giants questioned. And now the Giants questioned it, but they didn't say we aren't going to sign you, but we're going to definitely either cut the contract down or we're going to put some language in the contract that protects us in case your leg doesn't pan out. They do say that the talks between the Mets and Scott Boras regarding Correa have been much more productive than it was in San Francisco after they expressed their concerns when they saw the Correa's physical. But the New York Post, Mike Puma, provided additional context last night, reporting that there have been at least 3 rival teams that have been in touch with Boras about Correa after the Mets also expressed trepidation. Puma says that Correa would strongly prefer to join the Mets than go back into free agency. Of course, hello. Of course. So this is the thing, though. This is the interesting thing about it. Correa's camp, a.k.a. Scott Boras, is not open to moving off the initial 12-year, $315 million price point. So basically, they're saying we still want all that money, even though we're questioning the physical. So you got to think about it in I mean, think about it like this. Remember when JD Martinez went to the Red Sox and they found something that they didn't like in his physical? They worked it out in 2018. It was a $110 million deal, but they started having concerns about his foot. So while he had a 2017 season that was monstrous, he hit 45 home runs that year between Detroit and Arizona. He still missed 33 games at the start of the year with a sprained ligament in his right foot. But he was able to keep the deal that they made, 5-year deal worth $110 million. But they also determined that it would not void the contract, but they worked into Martinez's deal a few provisions based around his long-term health. So, if Martinez lands on the disabled list in the 4th or 5th year of his deal, the Red Sox would be protected, and that really, to me, is a perfect comparison to what we're dealing with Carlos Correa. He'll probably still get the 12 years. He'll still get the 310, but if he has trouble with these issues that have been expressed now by at least 2 teams, then they protect themselves from having to pay exorbitant amount of money. By the way, okay, these teams aren't stuck on the hook for this money. If this player gets injured, there's insurance for this. So they're going to pay a small percentage. If the guy sits on the injured list all year long, they'd be better off than having him not injured and paying him all that money. They'll just put him on the injured list. They have insurance for these things. So there's still a few first basemen left for the Cubbies. Let's talk about the Cubbies. I don't know. Let's just go down the list how I have it. Andrew Benintendi received the largest contract in White Sox history when he signed for $75 million. The Pittsburgh Pirates and the Oakland Athletics have never signed any player for that amount of money. I don't think their whole payroll is that. Okay? Teams are checking in on Chris Sale's availability. The Red Sox are not looking to trade any of their starters, but view rotation as an area of depth that they're at least willing to listen and consider. He does have a complete no-trade clause, so he can veto potential deals. The Marlins and the Orioles have had recent discussion involving Cedric Mullins. I don't know why in the world the Orioles would consider giving up Cedric Mullins. It makes absolutely no sense. When they're ready to win right now, they should be investing in more players, not trading off their best players. I mean, Cedric Mullins, number one, he is a good fantasy. I was going to say he's a better player than he is a fantasy player, but he's a great fantasy guy, especially now since his price has gone down back to reality. Now, get your DFS handy books out, and you could remember this little tidbit about Mike Trout. In the past 16 hits in Seattle, in Mike Trout's last 16 hits in Seattle, 10 out of 16 of them were home runs. And Seattle, by the way, is not known as a home run ballpark. This is a pitcher's park, not a hitter's park. But when Mike Trout goes to Seattle, pay the amount of extra money that you're going to have to get him on your daily fantasy lineup. Marcell Ozuna. Okay. Do we even have to talk about this guy? How annoying. All right. He's probably going to be on Atlanta's 2023 opening day roster. The Braves have unsuccessfully pursued potential bad contract swaps of Ozuna for both Patrick Corbin and Madison Bumgarner. Explain to me why you would want to trade one bad contract for 2 other bad contracts. I mean, all right. The Braves would have to eat they owe this guy $37 million. But they don't care about his domestic violence stuff, even though it was caught on the body cam of the police who came over when he was throwing his wife up against the wall. Nobody cares about that because he silently took the punishment MLB gave him and he moved on. So nobody cares about that. But everybody wants to dog on Bauer, even though Bauer decided, I'm not taking the punishment because I don't think I did anything wrong. So there's, something to be said about this. Anyway, enough about Bauer. No news on him, by the way. We'll see what happens. We can expect Marcell Ozuna to come to camp with the understanding that he has a chance to turn things around, blah, blah, okay? If he's productive and he isn't a distraction, the Braves could gain the value not available by releasing him or including him in a bad contract swap. So this reporter thinks that they're going to try to trade Ozuna's bad contract for Patrick Corbin's bad contract, which is uneven feasible to me. But that's the opinion of this guy. Corbin's contract is worse than Ozuna's, and he's coming off 2022 when his ERA was over 6.31 to be exact, with a 1.33 whip. He's owed $24 million just in 2023 and $35 million in 2024. Can you imagine trading Ozuna's bad contract for Corbin's bad contract? There's no chance. I mean, look, the Braves haven't even had any luck turning bad starting pitchers around that came from other teams. For example, Robbie Erlin, Tommy Malone, and there's more. The Braves are great at raising young pitchers through their farm system, but they are not good at acquiring bad pitchers and making them better, like, for instance, San Francisco Giants have been able to do recently. Madison Bumgarner, another problem contract. The first year that the Diamondbacks signed Madison Bumgarner was the shortened 2020 season, and he was one of the worst pitchers in baseball, okay? He hasn't been that good since. He hasn't been that much better, but at least his ERA is under 5. He's got a 4.67 ERA in 2021 and a 4.88 ERA in 2022. He's making $23 million next year and $14 million in 2024. So this sports writer thinks it's a great idea for the Braves, who haven't had luck making pitchers good, to trade a perfectly viable outfielder in Marcell Ozuna for 2 horrible contracts and 2 starting pitchers that are, I would say, at least past their prime, if not completely useless to make their team better. But one good thing about Bumgarner, if you want to take into consideration, if they make it to the World Series, because Bumgarner crushes the World Series, he's got a .25 ERA in the World Series, but they have to get there first. Okay? All right. Listen to this, okay? Listen to this. The Dominican Republic, producing and putting out just the best of the best in baseball. This is the potential lineup, okay, for the 2023 World Baseball Classic, a potential Dominican Republic lineup. Now, this isn't in order, but I'm just going to go around the infield and the outfield and tell you the players that will be in the lineup. Starling Marte, Julio Rodriguez, Juan Soto, Wander Franco, Jose Ramirez, Manny Macho Man Machado, Vladdy Jr., Gary Sanchez, and you can't forget Rafael Devers. Can you even imagine? Now listen to their pitching, okay? Sandy Alcantara, Framber Valdez, Luis Castillo, and Christian Javier, all from the Dominican Republic. I mean, this team is... I've never seen a team with Macho Man, Jose Ramirez, Juan Soto, Julio Rodriguez, all these guys from the Dominican. That team would be on fire, okay? Now, let's talk about Toronto. How are we doing in the chat room, Leonard?
Doing great. Doing great.
Are you participating?
Yes, I am. 18 in the chat room and people are rolling.
Okay. Lots of participation today, my friends. All right. Toronto. Could they have the best defensive outfield in baseball? Now, the thing I want you to remember for fantasy purposes here is how much improved these pitchers will be when they have a decent outfield. So let me go through some notes here. The Blue Jays have radically transformed the way they play defense. They're actually paying attention to avoiding runs scoring. Now, they made a trade with the Diamondbacks for Dalton Varsho, who last year was the best defensive outfielder in the game, and they also added Kevin Kiermaier a couple of weeks ago, which these 2 players alone, yes, I know they're not star fantasy guys, but these 2, as far as defense goes, they're excellent. Now, the manager, the GM, Ross Atkins, he says that we've been entirely focused on preventing more runs. So they send Gabriel Moreno and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. to the Arizona Diamondbacks for Dalton Varsho. Now, this past season, the outfield that Toronto had with George Springer, Teoscar Hernandez, and Raimel Tapia and Gurriel, they combined to post -7 defensive runs saved and -9 outs above average. That's per StatCast. In 2022, the current outfield of Varsho, Kiermaier, and Springer combined for 17 defensive runs saved and 21 outs above average. And that was with Kiermaier playing on one hip, which, by the way, has been surgically repaired since last year. So Atkins goes on to say, all too often in the industry, everyone in the game focuses so much on pitching, but you certainly never lose sight of the impact of defense, but it's a harder thing to quantify and it's a harder thing to measure the impact of. The industry is better at it now than they were, and we feel like we've improved at a great deal and just made significant strides that way. Now, a good way to measure the quality of a team's defense is to look at the pitcher's FIP, fielding independent percentage, which only shows how many runs a pitcher would allow based on the things that the pitcher can control, like strikeouts, walks, hit batters, and home runs allowed. So the formula generates, an ERA-looking number, and if the FIP is significantly lower than the pitcher's ERA, then you can assume that the defense was not helping this guy out very much. And that's why we look at FIP a lot more than we look at ERA, really. Although, how much does it matter if you're working with the same defense that you had last year? Right now, the Toronto Blue Jays, I would take a look at these FIPs. Look at Kevin Gausman. Look at Jose Barrios. These are two great pitchers who got screwed by the defense. Now, I would assume, I haven't looked at it specifically, but I would assume that their FIP is much lower than their actual ERA. How's it going, Leonard? Let me take a look here. It says, all right, only 3 Blue Jays threw 135 innings last season, and the numbers show that Jose Barrios and Kevin Gausman were badly betrayed by the gloves behind him. Barrios had a 5.23 ERA, the worst in the majors among qualified starters, and was 68 points higher than his FIP, which isn't still good, by the way, 4.55 FIP. But I still believe that Jose Barrios is going to have a career season coming up. I don't know when. I don't know if it's going to be next year, but I have not given up on this guy. I think that he has great qualities in a pitcher. I think that he's excellent to watch. I know that's not going to score any points for fantasy, but I do believe and have high hopes for both him and Kevin Gausman going into this season. Gausman allowed a major league record 368 batting average on balls in play. Think of that. Any ball that was hit in play, he had a 368 batting average against. That's horrible for defense. And he had a 2.38 FIP over a 3.35 ERA. So, again, it just absolutely shows you that the Toronto Blue Jays were super smart by adding these 2 defensive outfielders to their already just stacked lineup. I think this is going to help them out a lot. Okay? Now, so it talks about the fact that the Toronto Blue Jays played a defensive shift in the infield a lot. Also, they played an outfield defensive shift a lot. The outfield shift that they used, they shifted in the outfield 4 times as often as any other team. That's because they had no range with the players that they had, even though they're good names and good hitters. They had no range in the outfield, so they used the defensive shift a ton, 4 times more than any other team. So there you go. We'll see. None of that shift stuff is going to be happening next year. So, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, especially for these hitters where the shift was used on them a lot. I expect them to be much better fantasy value than they were last year. So that is something I would look up the numbers. When I prepare this year for fantasy, I'm going to be looking up the numbers about which hitters had the most shifts on them these past couple of seasons, because it's clear when a player has, Lenny might say that the player can't hit to the opposite side of the field. I say they choose not to try to hit to the opposite side of the field. There are players out there with distinct splits in where they hit the ball. So I would look at their spray chart. I would look at to see if they're not going to get shifted on anymore. So that is a positive, and it should help out these hitters that have been suffering from the shift. Who knows, though? That could be wrong. You'd think it was common sense, right? But we don't know yet. So, with Varsho, Gold Glove caliber outfielder, the best outfielder in baseball defensively last year, Gausman can't wait for him to come because, of course, exactly what we just talked about. Now, he's a lefty, so that helps out. But think of this. Varsho, when we think of Varsho, we think, okay, but he hit 27 home runs last season, and that would have tied for second on the Blue Jays roster with Matt Chapman and Vladdy Jr. 27 home runs. We really think, and Gausman said this, I think his power will only play up in the AL East in these smaller ballparks, so we'll see what happens there, but he could be right for sure. Varsho's only made 11 starts in left field in the big leagues, as opposed to 70 in right and 76 in center. He also played 61 games behind the plate, but he looks forward to seeing what life is like in a new spot, and with that ability, he could play pretty much anywhere. He's named after his dad's former teammate, catcher Darren Daulton. I thought that was an interesting tidbit. So, alongside Kiermaier and Springer in the revamped outfielder with Varsho, the pitching staff is going to be well taken care of. Now let's move on from Toronto and their wonderful, excellent defensive outfield and talk about Jeter Downs. Jeter Downs was claimed by the Washington Nationals. Remember Jeter Downs, how much we love Jeter Downs? I think we do. I think we've talked about this before. He was designated for assignment. He's only 24 years old. The Red Sox got him in the Mookie. I'm sure King Hap just wants to punch somebody for hearing this because, they traded Mookie Betts and they got back. Verdugo and Downs are 2 out of the 3 that they got back. And that was just a horrible trade for the Red Sox because in the past 2 seasons, across 180 appearances at AAA, Downs couldn't even play at AAA. He had a 193 batting average, a 292 on base percentage, and a 368 slugging percentage. In last year, when he had a small chance to do it in the majors, he collected 6 hits and 41 at bats. Former top prospect swung his way out of Boston's plans, leading them to dump him for the mundane purpose of clearing a spot on the 40-man roster. But hey, look, Washington Nationals, what do they have to lose, right? I mean, this kid did show that he had significant power and potential when he was playing in the Los Angeles Dodgers farm system. Why not try to get him back on track, even if the Nationals player development record suggests that they really aren't able to do that? But would you take a chance on these kind of kids, I mean, there's some guys don't mature that quick as others, and he's only 24, so let's give him a chance to and I'm sure he was practically free. The Nationals, they finished last place 3 consecutive seasons. They still are set on adding on the margins instead of really spending in free agency. What do they have to lose? So they actually designated reliever Reed Garrett for assignment. The Nationals lost 107 games last year. They maintained the top waiver spot, meaning that they did get the first crack at Downs. They also added this offseason, they added right-handed pitcher A.J. Alexy from the Texas Rangers. They also brought over reliever Hunter Harvey, remember him? Outfielder Alex Call. And they also got Mike Ford, Josh Palacios, Patrick Murphy, Lucius Fox, and Francisco Perez, who were all acquired in the past 16 months and are either off the 40-man roster or out of the organization entirely. So they've taken chances before. It didn't work out for them. But hey, Jeter Downs' stock has never been lower. And at one point, Baseball America rated Downs as the 19th best prospect in baseball. So he's born in Colombia, drafted in the first round out of Miami High School in 2017, saw his strikeout rate surge in the upper levels of the minors. So a lot of times we see these guys, they play great in the minors, and once they get up to the majors, it just doesn't translate. It happens all the time, and it's something that we should all expect to happen, even with the best of the best prospects, at least for a little while. But this guy couldn't even really cut it down at AAA. So he's still young, and another thing, he has 2 minor league options remaining, meaning that for now he could swing between the majors and AAA without going on waivers again. So they basically have no middle infield depth that's even close to reaching the majors. So Downs actually fits logically behind C.J. Abrams, Luis Garcia, and Heimer Candelario. Also can't forget Carter Kieboom. Whether Downs becomes an actual part of the Nationals' future can be sorted in the years ahead. But think of this. 4 years ago, the Cincinnati Reds traded Jeter Downs, Homer Bailey, and Josiah Gray to the Dodgers. They got back Kyle Farmer, Matt Kemp, Alex Wood, and Yasiel Puig. 14 months later, Downs, Alex Verdugo, and Connor Wong were sent to the Red Sox for Betts and David Price. Now, is Eddie Heckman here today? Leonard?
Yes.
Okay, let me take a sip of my coffee.
Yes, Eddie Heckman is here. And he just responded.
Let's talk about the pitching and what's the Orioles going to do. According to the Athletics' Ken Rosenthal.
Read what I wrote. Behind every great woman.
I can't see the chat.
Oh, it's right above Eddie.
Behind every great woman is a man?
No, there's a great behind.
Really? You stopped my Orioles starting pitching talk for that?
Oh, okay. I didn't know you would do that.
Jesus. All right. Everybody's doing good. Hello, Eddie. Okay, we're going to talk about the Orioles. I can't imagine. What do you think of the Orioles even talking about getting rid of Cedric Mullins? How could that possibly be? I just can't see it. Anyways, Rosenthal wrote a hot stove roundup. He does say that the Orioles cannot be ruled out on a trade for any starter who might be available, including Corbin Burns. Now, if you remember, Lenny's been saying that. Weren't you saying Corbin Burns is going to Orioles?
No.
Where did you? Oh, the Mets. You thought.
All right. I think Corbin Burns goes somewhere.
He's going somewhere, according to Lenny. But can you imagine Corbin Burns as an Oriole? If you're an Oriole fan, it seems too good to be true. But if there's any team in Major League Baseball that has the prospect package to deal for one of the game's best pitchers, it's the club with the top-ranked farm system, which is the O's. They're in a position to shock the baseball world. Now, he also says don't get your hopes up, you know, the history of the Orioles. But I'm telling you, this is not the normal Orioles. This is a team that can look over the pond at the Red Sox and see that they can't compete because they gave away Xander Bogart. They haven't signed any pitching. Sorry to say this to my Boston friends, but the Red Sox are going to be finishing at the bottom of the pile in the AL East, which you don't see very often. But the Orioles have a small window of opportunity here where they have a team that can compete. Now, look, they have the best farm system in baseball. They also have a big potential trade piece with Jorge Mateo. They've already received calls about Mateo's availability almost immediately after the Cubbies reached an agreement with Dansby Swanson, because there you go, Dansby was the last best shortstop available.
Oh, bless you.
Hold on, let me get my coffee again. Okay. So immediately after Swanson signed, the Orioles started receiving calls about Jorge Mateo. So because the market dried up, Trey Turner, Carlos Correa, Xander Bogaerts, Dansby Swanson, all gone, the Orioles have a young athletic option that they may be willing to trade. Now, Mateo, he's 27 years old, in the prime of his life. He had the best season of his career last year with the Orioles. He led the American League with 35 stolen bases, had 109 hits, 25 doubles, 13 homers, 7 triples in 150 games. His OPS was 646. It wasn't great, but his speed and defense make him a quality option. Now, this offseason, the Orioles have signed former All-Star second baseman Adam Frazier, starting pitcher Kyle Gibson, and reliever Michael Givens. What's that sound, Leonard?
I don't know.
Okay, they signed Kyle Gibson, Michael Givens, and they lost starting pitcher Jordan Lyles to the Kansas City Royals. They don't necessarily have to trade Mateo, but they might be interested in doing so if they can get a good starting pitcher. I'd like to hear Eddie's input on this, and let's go over to Unholy's team, the Cubbies. I mean, as a Cubbies fan, you have to be at least, look, they signed Swanson, they signed Taillon, they signed Corey Bellinger, and they signed Brad Boxberger. They agreed to terms with catcher Tucker Barnhart. A source has confirmed that they have a deal in place to bring back lefty Drew Smyly. The question is, exactly how much have those signings changed the Cub 2023 outlook, and what other big name additions are on the horizon?
After this, do the Rotorius question about Yoshida.
Swanson naturally declined to go into detail about the team-building plans the Cubs shared with him, and the club has been known to be quite specific in those conversations. Like when they courted John Lester, he later revealed that pursuing Jason Hayward was part of their pitch. So, according to Dansby Swanson, the Cubbies definitely have a clear plan for what they want to do, the types of people they want, the types of players they want to bring on board. And Dansby Swanson also says that he feels like the first step is fully building a winning culture. You've got to show everybody that you want to win and that you're going to win, and then people really start to buy into that vision. The Cubs' biggest improvement has been their defense up the middle. They got Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson right up the middle. And then you also have a 2019 Gold Glover, Bellinger. He's in center field. Jan Gomes and Barnhart are defense-first catchers. So offensively, the Cubs still have holes and questions. But Swanson, he's a great addition to their hitting. Bellinger's is unclear how he's going to respond. But I feel like as a Cubs fan, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, Unholy, at least they did something, right? They're rebuilding, but at least they're getting players with high chance ceilings. That they're not losers. I mean, Swanson is an excellent addition, I think, and just really made their team better. Kyle Hendricks is one we don't know about his health. It's uncertain, but they still need to round out their bullpen. So, even their president of baseball operations, Jed Hoyer, he talks about a lot. He talks about you can never have too much pitching, so they do need to add some bullpen, and they absolutely did a good thing by adding Taillon. So they have quite a few pitchers who could thrive at the back end of the rotation in a swingman role or as depth, but they don't have the competition at the top to do what the best rotations do. All right, he wants me to talk about the Yoshida. Now, is this trade going to happen with the O'Neill and the Verdugo, Lenny?
No, it hasn't happened yet.
All right, we want to talk about Yoshida. Now, he agreed to a 5-year, $90 million contract with the Red Sox. His posting fee for the Oryx Buffaloes comes in at $15.4 million, so the Red Sox will be shelling out more than $105 million to sign this guy. He's 29 years old. He's been one of the best hit pitchers in Nippon professional baseball since he debuted in 2016 and had a .336 batting average with a .449 on base percentage. Okay, if he could, think of that. .336 average with a .449 on base percentage, 21 home runs, and an 80-42 walk to strikeout. So 80 walks and only 42 strikeouts in 121 games last season. His on-base skills are excellent. Should put him near the top of the lineup, especially if they lose Verdugo. Across 7 seasons over in Japan, he struck out just 9.4% of the time and hit .327. Last year, like I said, his numbers were excellent. He had an 8.1 strikeout rate. His contact is excellent. So, look, we don't know what's going to happen with this guy. He's transferring over from a completely different culture, completely different world. He is 29 years old, but he's excellent what he showed over there. So if you're The problem here is these imports, whatever you want to say, these people that move over here from another country with different language, different rules, different everything. I'm talking about Korea. I'm talking about Japan mostly. They come over here and it might take them a couple years. You just don't know. I mean, even Ohtani spent the first couple years over here injured and just not worth the investment that these fantasy players are willing to spend on him. I personally will not have Yoshida on any team because I already know that he's probably going to go in the mid-20s, and I'm not willing to spend that kind of money on somebody that's never played baseball for an MLB organization. I understand that people are different than me, but that's where I draw the line. I don't even bother to look into what he's capable of doing. I don't even bother spending time looking at that because I know that the chances are good that he is going to be overpriced on draft day. That's just my opinion. But definitely going to play for the Red Sox, especially if Verdugo. Even if Verdugo stays, he's still playing on the Red Sox, and he's still going to sit at the top of the lineup. So you got that. But I'm just saying, I think that there's other players that could possibly be a better deal than that. All right. Now we got 10 more minutes, and I'm moving on here just so I can finish my notes that I had. But Rotorius, good question, and let's talk about the Yankees. I think we're going to talk about, let me get back to my notes. Pardon me, we're going through the White Sox real quick. We don't have a lot of time for this. Is Daniel here? I'm not even talking about the White Sox unless Daniel's here.
I think he is. Yeah.
Okay. The signing of, oh God, what are they thinking doing this? Andrew Benintendi is not good. Why did they just pay him so much money? Okay? I don't get it. Now, here's the thing. They needed a left-handed hitter, and he'll probably hit number 2, right? Right behind Tim Anderson, if he's able to play this year, because it seemed like he had a lot of problems last year. $75 million for 5 years. That was a franchise record for the largest deal in franchise history. Now, that's not even that much, but you see, they saved $15 million a year on Abreu, and they reinvested this in Benintendi. I'm sorry, I don't think that made a lot of sense. I understand they needed a lefty, but Abreu was just such a team leader in the clubhouse, and $15 million, he earned that money. Benintendi's been junk. I'm sure the Kansas City Royals were happy to get rid of him. Did he play for another team in between? I don't even know. He's that useless in fantasy. Now, the White Sox, they still have some issues. They got left field and second base were the two unsolved areas in the lineup this offseason, and indications are the remaining allotted resources were spent on Benintendi, leaving second base for internal options, barring a trade, rather than spending any more money because they ate up all of the money that they saved with this guy. They could trade Liam Hendricks, but can you even imagine them trading Liam Hendricks and then sitting there at the end of games going, oh my gosh, we can't close out games because he's excellent? So their choices for second base are Romy Garcia. He's 26 years old. He's had 142 Major League plate appearances. He batted .238 with a .257 on-base percentage, 2 home runs in 32 games last year. But his season was turned upside down because he had tonsils removed. He had a lengthy, mysterious period of illness while he was playing at AAA. He's 6'1", 215 pounds, and stole 20 bases. Look, here's where it was good. Last year, like I said, he had his tonsils out. He had an injury-plagued season. But in 2021, at AA Birmingham, he stole 21 bases and hit 20 homers, playing in a huge ballpark. So this is not a hitter's park. He regained his health and played 25 games at second base last year from August 24th to the end of the season. The Sox like his athleticism, defensive versatility, and raw power. I think is this the guy that played in every position? No. All right. So he struck out 39 times and only walked twice. That's the problem with this guy. So playing him at second base, you would have a lineup of Anderson, Benintendi, Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez, Yoan Moncada, Andrew Vaughn, Yasmani Grandal, Oscar Colas, and Gonzalez at the bottom of the order at second base. And they do have other options. They have Lurie Garcia, who is turning 32 in March. He's entering his 10th season with the Red Sox, and he was a favorite of Tony La Russa. Now that Tony La Russa is gone, and when he did leave, Garcia's playing time plummeted, okay? Miguel Cairo took over as the manager on August 31st, and Garcia did not see a lot of time playing after that. But he's only in the second of a 3-year, $16.5 million contract. He can play 3 outfield positions and infield spots, and he's best suited for a utility role. They also have a choice, Lenny Sosa. He went 4 for 36 in his 11-game stint in the majors last year. He was the Sox 4th-ranked prospect, showed power when he batted .315 with a .369 on-base percentage, 23 homers in 119 games between Birmingham and Charlotte last season. He did struggle when he was called up after Danny Mendick tore his ACL in June, and he batted .114 with a .139 on-base percentage. He's no better than average offensive or defensively, same with Gonzalez. So they also have Jose Rodriguez, the Sox number 7 prospect. He was added to the 40-man roster this fall. They have third baseman Jake Berger. He hit 8 homers in 51 games last season. And Mendick is gone. He could have been a possibility, but he was non-tendered and signed by the Mets. So the Yankees, what are they going to do in left field? I know that the Yankees were looking at Michael Conforto. He was on their radar. Now that the Giants signed him for 2 years, $36 million, they need to figure out what they're going to do in their left field. 10 players saw time in left field for the Yankees last year. Of the players who made more than 10 appearances there, Joey Gallo, Andrew Benintendi, and Miguel Andujar all have new teams. Tim LeCastro, Marwin Gonzalez are free agents, and Aaron Hicks is the only one remaining on the roster. So, of course, there were reports that the Yankees were trying to move Hicks this winter, but he still remains on the team, and they don't have a lot of choices here unless they go and trade for a left-handed outfielder, a left fielder. They have this 33-year-old Aaron Hicks, who was basically he's been disappointing most of his career. Last year, especially, in 130 games, he batted .216 with a .330 on-base percentage, 90 weighted runs created plus, which is 10 points below the league average. It's his second straight year that he's been below average offensively. He was okay. He was a solid contributor in the years 2017 and maybe 2018. He's just seen his power numbers drop off significantly in recent years. And he did benefit from a move from center to left field and was worth 8 defensive runs saved in 413 innings there in 2022. He has 3 years and $30.5 million, including a buyout on a $12.5 million team option, but that's not even till 2026. So let me repeat that. He has 3 years and $30.5 million owed to him. They have no other left fielder right now. So what are that's who's playing left field. That's all I got to say. They basically come out, the Pirates are asking way too much for Brian Reynolds, okay? So whether or not the Yankees have the money, are they willing to part with that much money for Brian Reynolds? You got to think about this potential trade situation going on here. They also have Estevan Florio, who we met at Arizona Fall League, 25 years old. He's been stuck in the upper minors for a while now. He only has 63 big league plate appearances in the last 3 seasons, and during that time he batted .185 with a .302 on-base percentage and only 1 home run. He was a former top 100 prospect. He actually hit okay. He hit at AAA .283 with a .368 on-base percentage, 15 home runs, and 39 stolen bases at AAA last year. This is a potential for this reason and this reason on top of what I just told you. The 39 stolen bases are excellent. We thought this guy was more of a power hitter than anything, but turns out he's a speedy guy, but he's out of options. The Yankees would have to expose him to waivers if they want to take him off the big league roster. For that reason, you can expect him to have a spot on the 40-man roster on opening day because they cannot send him back to minor leagues without allowing him to hit waivers. That's a huge deal. So, you want to take a chance on someone that could get to play some left field? Estevan Florial. Now, Giancarlo Stanton, of course, he spent more time in the outfield last season than he has since 2018. 312 and two-thirds innings after being restricted to the DH spot almost exclusively in recent years. So most of that playing time came in right field, where he was worth -4 defensive runs saved, and that is not going to get better. We know he's not young anymore. He can still play out there. He's a strong offensive threat, but it seems more likely that the Yankees will keep him in the DH spot more often than not and use him in the outfield only occasionally, especially since we know his injury history. Now, there is one other, and then I'll finish up. Oswaldo Cabrera. I'm going fast, Leonard.
You'll finish up.
Well, geez, there's a lot to talk about. Okay.
Yeah.
Oswaldo Cabrera, first big league call-up, he got it in August, okay? He played 44 games. He batted .247 with a .312 on-base percentage. He hit 6 home runs, and this is the guy that's played every position but center field and catcher. Oswaldo Cabrera. He only played 34 innings at outfield in the minors, but he spent most of his big league time in the corner spots, and he was impressive at those corner spots with a 9 defensive runs saved in 278 and two-thirds innings. So by doing that, he put a strong case forward to be an everyday outfielder going forward. He may have more value to the Yankees as a utility type given his ability to play everywhere. This guy played every position, okay, except for center field and catcher. They don't need him at center field. They do need him at left field, whatever. Oswaldo Cabrera, keep him on your radar. Keep Estevan Florial on your radar for this spring training. You know, these are the types of players that we want to look at because with the Yankees only having Aaron Hicks as their left fielder, they need more options, and they're not spending the money on Brian Reynolds, and they probably won't spend the money on Max Kepler or, the trades is what you would have to do for these guys. Trade for Brian Reynolds, trade for Max Kepler. Kepler is under control for another season at $9.5 million, including a buyout on a $10 million 2024 team option. Now, he did not have a great year last year, but in my opinion, Max Kepler would be an excellent addition. I think this guy is a way better hitter than what he's been doing over the past couple years. He absolutely hits the ball harder than most hitters in baseball. He's also a left-handed pull hitter. So there's a huge chance that the combination of Yankee Stadium's short porch and the restrictions on defensive positioning, which means no more shift, can really help his value. His value is in his glove right now. The Yankees could really use Max Kepler if they have anything to trade for him. They don't have a lot in their farm system right now, I don't think. So anyway, that's it for today. There's plenty more of the notes, but Lenny likes me to cut this thing down to 9:45, and that's what we're doing. So he'll be back tomorrow, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day. It was a pleasure to fill in, and we'll see you soon.